If you've ever felt like you don't quite fit into the common personality boxes people talk about, there's a chance you're not confused at all. You may simply be a rare personality operating in a world that doesn't naturally speak your language. Many people who are true INFJs spend years thinking something is off about them before realizing there's actually a consistent pattern behind how they think, feel, and move through life. One of the earliest signs of a true INFJ is a lifelong sense of being internally complex but externally misunderstood. From a young age, INFJs often feel far older than their peers, not in a pretentious way, but in the sense that their inner world is unusually deep and reflective. While others may be focused on immediate experiences, INFJs are quietly trying to understand meanings, motives, and long-term implications. They may struggle to explain this inner depth to others because their insights feel intuitive rather than linear. They often just know things without being able to fully explain exactly how they know them. A true INFJ lives primarily in their inner world. This doesn't mean they're detached from reality or incapable of action. It means their most vivid experiences happen internally. Thoughts, patterns, symbols, future possibilities, and unspoken dynamics occupy their mind constantly. They replay conversations, analyze emotional undertones, and imagine how situations will unfold weeks or even years ahead. This can make them appear quiet or reserved, but internally their mind is rarely still. For someone unfamiliar with the INFJ type, this can feel like being mentally busy all the time without knowing why. Another strong sign is an almost strange sensitivity to people. INFJs tend to read other people easily, often picking up on emotions, intentions, and inconsistencies long before they are spoken. They notice subtle shifts in tone, body language, energy, and silence. This isn't something they consciously train. It happens automatically. Because of this, INFJs often know when someone is lying, struggling, or hiding something even when there is no obvious evidence. This sensitivity can feel like both a gift and a curse, especially when the INFJ absorbs emotional atmospheres they didn't ask for. Despite this deep awareness of others, true INFJs are intensely private about themselves. They may be open, warm, and even expressive when talking about ideas, values, or helping others, yet deeply guarded about their own inner struggles. Many INFJs feel safest revealing themselves only to a very small circle, or sometimes to no one at all. This often leads others to assume the INFJ is emotionally open when, in reality, only the surface layers are visible. Their core thoughts and feelings are carefully protected. Another trait of a true INFJ is the struggle between idealism and realism. INFJs see how the world could be, how people could treat each other, how systems could be fairer, how lives could be more meaningful. This vision is not naive. It is paired with a sharp awareness of how things actually are. This contrast often creates inner conflict. INFJs may feel deeply disappointed by hypocrisy, cruelty, or shallow thinking, yet still hold on a hope that change is possible. This internal struggle often fuels their desire to help, guide, or quietly influence others for the better. Many INFJs feel a strong pull toward purpose rather than pleasure. They are less motivated by status, attention, or material success, and more driven by meaning. They want their actions to matter, even if no one applauds them. This can lead to career confusion, especially in a world that rewards visibility and competition. INFJs often feel dissatisfied in roles that lack depth or moral alignment, even if those roles are socially respected. They may take unconventional paths, change directions later in life, or feel restless until they find work that aligns with their values. Emotional intensity is another hallmark, though it is often hidden. INFJs feel deeply, but not always loudly. Their emotions tend to run beneath the surface like a strong current, rather than crashing waves. When they love fully. When they are hurt, the pain can linger for a long time. Because they often prioritize understanding and harmony, INFJs may suppress their own emotional needs until they reach a breaking point. When that point is reached, the shift can surprise others who never saw the build-up. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Mastery course today. The link is in the description of this video. A true INFJ is also marked by a strong inner moral compass. They are not easily swayed by trends, peer pressure, or popular opinion if it conflicts with their internal sense of right and wrong. Even when they adapt outwardly to maintain peace, internally they are constantly evaluating whether something aligns with their values. This can make them appear agreeable on the surface while quietly firm at their core. When an INFJ finally takes a stand, it is usually after long internal deliberation, and they rarely back down once that line is crossed. Another sign is a pattern of deep one-on-one relationships rather than broad social networks. INFJs often prefer a few meaningful relationships over many casual ones. Small talk can feel draining or pointless, while conversations about ideas, emotions, life direction, and personal growth energize them. They may appear socially capable, yet still feel lonely if they lack true depth in their relationships. This loneliness is not about being alone physically, but about being unseen mentally and emotionally. INFJs also tend to experience periods of withdrawal. When overstimulated, overwhelmed, or emotionally overloaded, they retreat inward to recalibrate. This withdrawal is not rejection, it is restoration. During these periods, they reflect, reorganize their thoughts, and reconnect with their inner vision. People unfamiliar with this pattern may interpret it as distance or disinterest, but for the INFJ, it is essential for balance. Another sign is the way INFJs think in patterns and symbols rather than isolated facts. They are constantly synthesizing information, connecting dots, and forming overarching insights. This allows them to anticipate outcomes and understand complex human dynamics, but it can also make it difficult for them to explain their reasoning step by step. They may arrive at conclusions quickly and accurately, yet struggle to justify them in a way others find convincing. Another sign that often emerges later in life is an INFJ's unusual relationship with conflict. True INFJs dislike conflict, not because they are weak or afraid, but because they can see all sides at once. When tension arises, their mind immediately maps out the emotional impact on everyone involved, the long-term consequences, and the hidden motivations beneath the surface. This makes impulsive reactions feel unnatural to them. However, when conflict violates their core values, something changes. The INFJ who once avoided confrontation can become unexpectedly direct, precise, and unyielding. This shift often shocks others, but to the INFJ, it feels like a necessary correction rather than aggression. Another sign lies in how INFJs process suffering, both their own and others. They don't merely empathize, they internalize meaning from pain. Difficult experiences tend to reshape their worldview rather than just hurt them. INFJs often ask, consciously or unconsciously, what is this teaching me? Or how can this be transformed into something useful? This tendency can make them resilient in quiet ways, even when they appear fragile. Over time, many INFJs develop a calm strength rooted in having faced inner darkness without losing their moral center. True INFJs also tend to struggle with chronic self-doubt despite clear competence. Because they see possibilities and flaws simultaneously, they are rarely fully satisfied with their own work or growth. They sense what could be improved long before others notice anything lacking. This can lead to perfectionism, procrastination, or an endless feeling of being almost there. Ironically, others may see them as insightful, wise, or even intimidatingly thoughtful, while the INFJ privately wonders if they are missing something obvious. Another often overlooked sign is an INFJ's selective ambition. They are not lazy, but they are extremely discerning about where they invest energy. Tasks that feel meaningless drain them quickly, while work aligned with their inner vision can unlock intense focus and endurance. When inspired, INFJs can work with near-obsessive dedication, losing track of time and comfort. When uninspired, even simple tasks can feel unbearably heavy. This contrast confuses many INFJs before they understand their need for purpose-driven motivation. INFJs also have a unique way of listening. They don't just hear words, they listen for what is unsaid. Silence, hesitation, contradictions, and emotional gaps speak loudly to them. People often feel understood, around INFJs without knowing why, which can lead to others opening up very quickly. This role of emotional container can become exhausting, especially when INFJs absorb problems without having an outlet of their own. Many INFJs go through phases of emotional burnout before learning the importance of boundaries. A true INFJ often experiences a delayed sense of identity. Rather than forming a fixed self-image early on, they evolve through stages. Each phase feels authentic at the time, yet incomplete in hindsight. This can make INFJs feel like shapeshifters, or like they are constantly becoming rather than being. What remains consistent is not their outer identity, but their inner values and way of perceiving the world. Once they recognize this pattern, many INFJs stop searching for a static label and start honoring their growth-oriented nature. There is also a strong pattern of symbolic thinking and attraction to archetypes, myths, psychology, spirituality, or hidden structures of reality. INFJs are often drawn to questions about meaning, destiny, morality, and human nature. Even if they are practical or scientific on the surface, they tend to search for underlying principles that explain life at a deeper level. This is why many INFJs feel a quiet pull toward teaching, counseling, writing, or guiding roles, even if they never pursue them formally. Another sign is how INFJs handle praise and recognition. External validation rarely satisfies them for long. Compliments may feel nice momentarily, but they don't anchor the INFJ's sense of worth. What matters more is internal alignment, knowing they acted with integrity, depth, and intention. This can make them seem indifferent to rewards or success markers that motivate others. At the same time, harsh criticism can cut deeply if it targets their character or values rather than their performance. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Mastery course today. The link is in the description of this video. INFJs also tend to experience sudden clarity after long periods of inner processing. They may wrestle silently with a decision or question for months, appearing indecisive, until one day everything clicks. When that moment arrives, the decision feels final and obvious to them. Others may be confused by how quickly the INFJ moves after such a long pause, not realizing that the real work happened internally. As they mature, many INFJs develop a quiet authority, not the loud, commanding kind, but a presence that comes from coherence between thought, feeling, and action. People sense that the INFJ has seen something or understands life in a way that goes beyond surface-level thinking. This presence often emerges after hardship, reflection, and self-integration, not from confidence alone. Another sign that becomes clearer with time is how INFJs relate to intuition versus logic. True INFJs do not reject logic, but they don't experience it as their primary starting point. Instead, insight comes first as a holistic sense of how something fits together. Logic is then used to support, explain, or refine that insight. This can make INFJs feel out of sync in environments that demand immediate, linear explanations. They may know the answer before they know the reasoning, which can lead to frustration when asked to show their work for conclusions that arrived intuitively. INFJs also tend to experience emotional echoes long after events have passed. A conversation, decision, or interaction may replay internally days or weeks later, revealing new layers of meaning. This is not rumination for its own sake, but an ongoing process of integration. INFJs extract lessons from experiences slowly and thoroughly, which helps them grow, but can also make it hard to just move on the way others seem to. Closure for an INFJ often comes internally, not externally. Another sign is the INFJ's relationship with authenticity. They have an acute discomfort with pretense, especially their own. While they may adapt their behavior to fit social contexts, they are constantly monitoring whether they are being true to their inner self. When they feel they are living out of alignment for too long, it creates deep internal unrest. This often precedes major life changes, such as leaving a career, ending a relationship, or redefining personal goals. To an INFJ, a false life is more exhausting than an uncertain one. True INFJs often feel responsible for the emotional well-being of environments they occupy. They sense tension in a room and instinctively try to smooth it out, sometimes without realizing they're doing it. This can turn into an unspoken role as mediator, emotional anchor, or quiet leader. Over time, many INFJs realize they've been carrying emotional weight that was never officially theirs. Learning to release this responsibility is a major growth milestone for the type. Another sign is an INFJ's unusual tolerance for solitude, paired with a deep need for connection. They can spend long periods alone without boredom, using the time to think, create, or reflect. Yet isolation without meaningful human connection eventually feels hollow. INFJs don't crave constant interaction. They crave resonance. One deeply aligned conversation can nourish them more than weeks of casual socializing. INFJs also tend to have an internal narrative that guides their life choices. They see their life as a story unfolding, with themes, lessons, and chapters. This doesn't mean they are detached from reality. Rather, they are oriented toward long-term coherence. Decisions are often filtered through questions like, who am I becoming? Or, what does this add to the bigger picture of my life? This narrative orientation can make them patient with slow progress and resilient during difficult phases. A less talked about sign is the INFJ's sensitivity to environments. Noise, clutter, harsh lighting, and chaotic spaces can feel mentally invasive. Conversely, calm, aesthetically pleasing, or symbolically meaningful environments can have a profound regulating effect on them. This is why many INFJs are drawn to intentional spaces, whether that's a carefully arranged room, nature, music, or art that reflects depth and harmony. INFJs often struggle with expressing anger in real time, not because they don't feel it, but because anger is quickly processed through empathy, foresight, and moral evaluation. By the time they're ready to express it, the moment may have passed. When anger does surface, it is usually measured, precise, and rooted in principle rather than impulse. Suppressed anger, however, can lead to emotional exhaustion or sudden emotional distancing. Another sign that often surprises people is how INFJs experience creativity. Even when they don't identify as creative in a traditional sense, their mind is constantly generating inner imagery, metaphors, stories, and conceptual frameworks. Creativity, for an INFJ, is not always about producing art. It is about synthesis. They instinctively weave ideas, emotions, and insights into cohesive inner models. This is why many INFJs are drawn to writing, symbolism, teaching, or behind-the-scenes creative roles where depth matters more than visibility. Another indicator is the INFJ's instinctive resistance to manipulation. While they are empathetic and compassionate, they are not easily deceived emotionally. They can sense when emotions are being used strategically rather than sincerely. This may not always register consciously at first, but it often shows up as a quiet discomfort or withdrawal. Over time, INFJs learn to trust this inner signal, realizing it has protected them from many unhealthy dynamics. INFJs also tend to have a complicated relationship with visibility. They often want their ideas, values, or impact to be seen, but not themselves. Being personally in the spotlight can feel exposing or draining, especially if it lacks depth. Yet being invisible can feel equally painful when it means their insights go unheard. This tension often leads INFJs to prefer influence through writing, mentoring, or one-on-one guidance rather than overt leadership roles, at least until they feel deeply aligned with the mission. Another sign is the way INFJs process decisions emotionally before acting outwardly. They may appear calm and measured when making big life changes, but internally they've already grieved what they're leaving behind. By the time the decision becomes visible, much of the emotional work is already complete. This can make their choices seem sudden or detached to others, even though they were the result of long internal struggle. INFJs also have a distinctive sensitivity to injustice, especially when it affects those who cannot easily defend themselves. This sensitivity may not always translate into loud activism, but it often shows up as quiet advocacy, ethical choices, or lifelong commitments to fairness and dignity. They feel a personal responsibility to live in a way that does not contribute to harm, even when compromise would be easier. INFJs often experience a split between how they are perceived and who they feel they truly are. Others may see them as calm, wise, kind, or put together, while internally they feel complex, uncertain, and constantly evolving. This gap can create a sense of isolation, as if no one fully sees the full spectrum of their inner life. Over time, many INFJs learn to accept that being fully seen by everyone is neither realistic nor necessary. Another sign is the INFJ's tendency to internalize standards rather than rely on external rules. They don't need constant supervision or validation to do the right thing. Their behavior is guided by inner principles that remain consistent across situations. This self-regulation can make them dependable and trustworthy, but it can also lead to harsh self-judgment when they feel they've fallen short of their own ideals. If you recognize yourself in these patterns, it may explain why you felt hard to categorize for so long. INFJs are often misunderstood not because they are unclear, but because they operate on layers most people never consciously access. Understanding this doesn't just clarify a personality type. It gives language to an inner life you may have been carrying quietly for years.